Hollywood has a long history of burning cash on sci-fi dreams that crash and burn. Some of these movies were mocked, abandoned, or buried under headlines calling them disasters. But here's the truth. Being a flop doesn't always mean being a failure. Some of the boldest, strangest, and most visionary sci-fi movies got ignored at first, only to be rediscovered as cult classics. So, which forgotten bombs actually hid greatness all along? Let's find out. Dune, 1984. When Dune hit theaters in 1984, it was supposed to be the next big franchise. David Lynch at the helm, Frank Herbert's sprawling saga as source material, and a hefty $40 million budget behind it. But what audiences got was a strange, brooding epic, stuffed with whispered dialogue, confusing narration, and characters muttering about spice like it was cosmic gold. The box office? Just $30 million worldwide. That's not just disappointing, it was catastrophic for Universal. Critics hammered it as incomprehensible. Viewers walked in expecting another Star Wars, and instead got a fever dream where people rode sandworms and political intrigue played out in hushed tones. Lynch himself later admitted he lost creative control, with studio meddling making it even messier. On paper, everything screamed blockbuster. In reality, audiences felt lost in a desert storm of ambition. But here's the twist. Over time, Dune became the very definition of a cult classic. Its production design, bizarre performances, and uncompromising tone have turned it into a must-watch for anyone fascinated by bold failures. Modern filmmakers cite its influence. Its imagery echoes in countless later works, and fans dissect every frame like scripture. Yes, Lynch's Dune bombed hard, but it also dared to swing for the fences with material many called unfilmable. And decades later, it's remembered less for the money it lost, and more for the unforgettable world it built. Sometimes a flop doesn't fade, it grows into legend. Tron, 1982. Imagine sitting in a movie theater in 1982 and suddenly being dropped into a glowing neon video game world. That was Tron. Disney spent $17 million creating pioneering computer graphics that looked like nothing else on screen. But when the dust cleared, the box office barely broke even. Critics shrugged it off as pretty but empty. To them, it was style without substance. For Disney, it was a crushing letdown. Audiences simply weren't ready for cyberspace back then. Computers were still mysterious boxes in office buildings, not the lifeblood of daily life. Watching Jeff Bridges zip through a digital grid on a light cycle felt more confusing than thrilling to mainstream viewers. The reviews didn't help either. Some called it cold and boring, missing the fact that they were witnessing the birth of a new cinematic language. And yet, history had the last laugh. Over the years, Tron became a cult cornerstone, revered by animators, designers, and tech pioneers. It didn't just influence films, it changed how people thought about computers and storytelling. Entire generations of video game developers cite Tron as their first glimpse of a digital frontier. By the time Tron Legacy rolled around in 2010, the world had finally caught up to what Disney attempted nearly 3 decades earlier. It may not have conquered the box office in 1982, but Tron redefined what visual effects could be. Sometimes a movie has to fail spectacularly in its own time to shape the future. Treasure Planet 2002. Disney thought it had struck gold with Treasure Planet, a $140 million animated reimagining of Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island set against the backdrop of deep space. With soaring visuals blending hand-drawn artistry and cutting-edge CGI, it was marketed as a bold new leap for animation. The problem? Audiences didn't show up. The movie only pulled in $109 million worldwide, making it one of Disney's most infamous financial failures. Critics actually admired the craftsmanship. The visuals were dazzling, the story heartfelt, and the central father-son themes packed emotional punch. But timing was brutal. Released just weeks after Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets and the Santa Claus 2, it was buried under more obvious holiday hits. And Disney itself gave it an uneven marketing push, leaving many families not even realizing it existed until it was gone. But here's where things get interesting. Over the years, Treasure Planet has quietly gained recognition as one of Disney's boldest and most beautiful experiments. Its imaginative steampunk-style ships, alien designs, and epic soundtrack have given it cult status among animation fans. Many now hail it as a lost masterpiece that deserved better. It didn't break records, but it broke barriers by blending the old and new, classic adventure storytelling with digital animation that felt ahead of its time. Treasure Planet was a bomb, yes, but it's also proof that sometimes box office numbers miss the magic happening on screen. Serenity, 2005. When Fox canceled Firefly after just one season, fans were crushed. Enter Serenity, Joss Whedon's attempt to give his beloved space western a proper send-off. With a $39 million budget and a fiercely loyal fan base, it seemed destined to succeed. Instead, it limped to a worldwide gross of about $40 million. Financially, it was a heartbreak. So, why did it stumble? Timing and scale. The film carried the expectations of a TV cult following, but lacked mainstream name recognition. Marketing struggled to sell it to casual moviegoers. Critics were kind, praising its mix of humor, action, and heart, but word of mouth didn't spread fast enough. For Universal, it was a flop, but for fans, it was a triumph. Serenity tied up character arcs, expanded the universe, and gave closure to stories that would have otherwise vanished in TV limbo. It showcased Whedon's knack for witty dialogue and emotional gut punches, balancing pulpy action with deeper themes about freedom, loyalty, and survival. In the years since, Serenity has aged into one of the great cult sci-fi films of the 2000s. It may never have reached blockbuster status, but it carved out immortality by honoring a fan base that refused to let the story die. That kind of loyalty can't be measured in ticket sales. Dark City, 1988. Before The Matrix blew minds, Dark City quietly slipped into theaters with its own vision of reality-bending worlds. Directed by Alex Proyas, it had a $27 million budget and grossed only $27.9 million, a financial wash. Critics called it too bleak, too strange, and too confusing for mainstream audiences. Against the feel-good wave of late 90s blockbusters, Dark City never stood a chance. But what a film it was. A noir-inspired nightmare of shifting memories, manipulated identities, and a city literally reshaped by alien overseers. Its atmosphere dripped with paranoia, its visuals draped in shadows, and its themes asked heavy questions about free will and control. It wasn't popcorn fun, it was cerebral, moody, and relentless. No wonder it baffled audiences in 1998. Yet, just a year later, The Matrix arrived and borrowed much of its visual DNA and philosophical edge. Suddenly, people looked back at Dark City and realized it had been an overlooked trailblazer. Film scholars and critics began reassessing it, praising its boldness and craft. Over time, it became a cult classic, cherished by fans who crave sci-fi with brains and atmosphere. Dark City didn't fail because it was bad. It failed because it was too far ahead of what people wanted. Today, its haunting world and daring storytelling earn it a place among the most fascinating sci-fi films of its era. Event Horizon, 1997. In 1997, audiences thought they were walking into another sleek sci-fi adventure. Instead, Event Horizon shoved them headfirst into a nightmare. With a $60 million budget and a measly $42 million return, it was declared a bomb. Critics tore it apart for being too gory, too nihilistic, and too strange. But here's the thing. It was also one of the most daring genre mashups of its decade. The setup is simple but chilling. A rescue crew boards a spaceship that disappeared near Neptune and has now mysteriously returned. What they discover is less science fiction and more interdimensional hellscape. Director Paul W. S. Anderson laced the film with imagery that felt like sci-fi had collided with Hellraiser. Audiences in 1997 weren't ready. They wanted hopeful exploration or slick action, not visions of cosmic horror and mutilation. Yet, time has worked its magic. Today, Event Horizon is recognized as a cult masterpiece of atmosphere and design. Its gothic sets, eerie score, and relentless sense of dread make it unforgettable. The gravity drive sequence alone, hinting at the horrors beyond human comprehension, has become iconic among horror and sci-fi fans alike. It may have been labeled a flop back then, but Event Horizon proved that sometimes you have to terrify your audience to leave a lasting mark. A movie too weird to succeed in 1997, now cherished for exactly that reason. The Black Hole, 1979. In the wake of Star Wars, Disney wanted their own sci-fi juggernaut. What they got instead was The Black Hole, a movie that confused critics, divided audiences, and stumbled at the box office. With a $20 million budget, it pulled in only $35 million. On paper, that sounds like a hit, but for Disney's first PG-rated film, it was considered a letdown. Why? Because The Black Hole was not the cheerful space romp people expected. It was dark, moody, and philosophical, loaded with talk about the nature of space, time, and death. The film followed a crew who discover a massive spaceship hovering near, you guessed it, the edge of a black hole. Inside waits Dr. Reinhardt, a genius who's lost his grip on reality, and a ship crawling with eerie secrets. Audiences at the time weren't sure what to make of it. Was it for kids? Adults? Fans of Star Wars walked out baffled. Critics sneered at its uneven tone. Yet, over time, the movie's haunting visuals and unnerving ending have earned it cult admiration. The film dared to ask unsettling questions instead of chasing lighthearted thrills. The Black Hole wasn't the blockbuster Disney wanted, but today it stands as a fascinating experiment in mixing family-friendly branding with cosmic dread. It flopped, but it also showed Disney wasn't afraid to stare into the abyss, literally. The Fountain, 2006. Darren Aronofsky doesn't do safe movies, and The Fountain is proof. With a $35 million budget and just $16 million at the box office, it was a commercial disaster. Audiences called it confusing. Critics were split between calling it profound or pretentious. But beneath that failure lies one of the most ambitious sci-fi love stories ever put to film. The movie spans 3 timelines: a conquistador searching for immortality, a modern scientist racing to save his dying wife, and a space traveler carrying a sacred tree through the cosmos. Hugh Jackman and Rachel Weisz ground the film with raw emotion, while Aronofsky uses surreal imagery to explore humanity's oldest question, how do we face death? In 2006, audiences weren't ready for a movie that felt more like a poem than a plot. They wanted explosions and clarity, not metaphors and layered timelines. Marketing didn't help either, pitching it like a traditional sci-fi blockbuster when it was anything but. Over time, though, The Fountain has become a cult favorite. Its bold visuals, emotional intensity, and haunting score by Clint Mansell now rank among Aronofsky's finest achievements. It failed to make money, but it succeeded in sticking with viewers who dared to let it wash over them. Sometimes, greatness doesn't shout, it whispers. The Fountain. Whispered so softly in 2006 that most missed it. But now, it's unforgettable. Starship Troopers 1997. Here's the irony. Starship Troopers bombed partly because audiences didn't realize it was smarter than them. With a $105 million budget and a $121 million box office take, it technically made money, but after marketing, it was labeled a disappointment. Critics dismissed it as shallow, violent pulp. They missed the point entirely. Director Paul Verhoeven, the same genius behind RoboCop, crafted a biting satire dressed up as bug-squashing spectacle. On the surface, it's a story about young soldiers battling alien insects. Dig deeper, and it's a razor-sharp mockery of fascism, propaganda, and blind patriotism. The glossy uniforms, the propaganda commercials, the over-the-top heroics, it was all intentional. Verhoeven grew up in Nazi-occupied Europe. He knew exactly what he was lampooning. Audiences in 1997 took it at face value. They saw mindless carnage instead of critique. Critics rolled their eyes, but in the years since, the film has been completely reappraised. Today, Starship Troopers is hailed as one of the most daring satires of the 90s, as influential as it is entertaining. It's proof that sometimes the audience is the problem, not the movie. Starship Troopers bombed because people weren't in on the joke. But now, it's the joke everyone finally gets. Speed Racer 2008. The Wachowskis swung for the fences with Speed Racer, and the ball didn't just miss, it flew into another stadium. With a $120 million budget and only $93 million at the box office, it was one of the biggest flops of 2008. Critics trashed it as chaotic, childish, and headache-inducing. For Warner Brothers, it was a costly embarrassment. But here's the twist. Speed Racer was ahead of its time. A live-action cartoon pumped full of candy-colored visuals, gravity-defying races, and pure sincerity. While many dismissed it as nonsense, those who stuck with it found a joyful, energetic movie unlike anything else. The Wachowskis leaned into absurdity with confidence, delivering a film that was both wild and heartfelt. The story follows Speed, a young racer navigating corruption in the racing world while honoring his family's values. On paper, simple. On screen, it became a kaleidoscope of spectacle. The editing, the digital backdrops, the stylized action, it was all radical. Too radical for 2008 audiences, apparently. Over the years, Speed Racer has earned cult classic status. Younger generations in particular have embraced it for its fearless style and emotional core. Critics who once trashed it have circled back, calling it misunderstood brilliance. It bombed because audiences weren't ready for such an unapologetically weird ride. But today, Speed Racer is seen for what it is, one of the boldest, most original family sci-fi films of the 2000s. AI, Artificial Intelligence 2001. What happens when you mix Stanley Kubrick's vision with Steven Spielberg's storytelling? You get AI, Artificial Intelligence, a film that confused audiences, divided critics, and disappointed at the box office. With a $100 million budget and a worldwide gross of about $235 million, it wasn't a total disaster, but marketing costs turned it into a financial letdown. For Spielberg, it was one of his most debated projects. The film tells the story of David, a childlike android who longs to be human. Haley Joel Osment delivers a haunting performance, bringing innocence and tragedy to a character who feels realer than most humans. Spielberg leaned into Kubrick's original bleakness while adding his own touches of sentimentality, creating a tonal blend that baffled many in 2001. Some thought it was too dark for families. Others thought it was too sentimental for serious sci-fi fans. But time has been kind. Today, AI is recognized as one of Spielberg's most daring works, asking deep questions about love, identity, and what it truly means to be alive. The ending, once ridiculed, is now seen as a bold meditation on humanity's legacy. It wasn't the crowd pleaser people expected, but I dared to make audiences uncomfortable. That's why it lingers. The Abyss, 1989. James Cameron is no stranger to pushing boundaries, but The Abyss nearly drowned him. With a budget ballooning to $70 million and a box office of just $90 million, it was considered a financial underperformer. The grueling underwater shoot made headlines, with stories of stressed actors and endless production delays. The movie itself is a high-stakes tale of an oil drilling crew encountering an alien presence deep under the ocean. Unlike the sleek monsters of Alien or the explosions of Terminator, this was slow, contemplative sci-fi. Audiences in 1989 weren't sure what to make of it. Critics praised the visuals but called it uneven. The studio cut nearly 30 minutes, including crucial thematic material, which didn't help. Yet, in time, The Abyss earned its redemption. The special edition restored Cameron's full vision, turning skeptics into admirers. Its groundbreaking CGI water creature became a stepping stone for effects that led to Terminator 2 and Jurassic Park. More than that, its themes of communication, empathy, and survival resonate deeply today. It wasn't a smash hit, but it was a milestone. The Abyss proved that, even in failure, Cameron was still pushing cinema forward. Waterworld, 1995. At the time, Waterworld was mocked as Kevin's Gate, a financial disaster on par with Hollywood's biggest failures. With a budget of $175 million, astronomical for 1995, it made only $264 million worldwide. Considering marketing and distribution, it lost money. The press had a field day, calling it bloated and misguided. But strip away the headlines, and what remains is a bold, original, eco-sci-fi epic. The world building was astonishing. An ocean-covered Earth where survivors scavenge, sail, and scheme for resources. Kevin Costner's reluctant hero, part human and part mutated survivor, was a risky move that didn't connect with mainstream audiences. But the sheer ambition of building floating atolls and staging massive water battles with practical stunts was jaw-dropping. Audiences laughed then, but decades later, people have circled back. What was once a punchline is now seen as a daring piece of world-building that deserves respect. The very things that sank it, its odd tone, its risks, its ambition, are the reasons it has a loyal following today. Waterworld didn't make the splash Universal hoped for, but it carved out a strange, enduring place in sci-fi history. The Adventures of Pluto Nash, 2002. Sometimes a flop is so massive, it becomes legendary. Enter The Adventures of Pluto Nash, a $100 million Eddie Murphy sci-fi comedy that grossed just $7 million worldwide. That's not just a failure, it's one of the biggest bombs in movie history. Critics didn't just dislike it, they annihilated it, calling it unfunny, lifeless, and bewildering. So why include it here? Because Pluto Nash is a fascinating relic of Hollywood excess. The movie imagines a futuristic nightclub owner caught in a conspiracy on a colonized moon. The sets are wild, the concept ambitious, and the attempt